to me, there's this strange distinction between the female mind and the male mind, where females are... No, maybe this isn't the case. Maybe this is all wrong. I'm speculating. This is why I'm trying to verbalize it, because I'm trying to question this in the real world to get other people's feedback. To me, there's this big distinction between the female mind and the male mind, where the female mind would prefer to be with a partner and to cultivate an emotional relationship with them and build off of that. But the male mind, like at least my male mind, I don't know if this is true for other people, would be perfectly happy with 4, 5 girls that, you know, I was with at various times, maybe multiple girls at the same time, and had a relationship with all of them that was very open and ready for, you know, exploration.
Here's what I'll say is that I know for a fact that there are plenty of people in non-monogamous relationships, men and women included. So I think that there's plenty of guys that I would know that would be, you know, abhorred by the idea or would not be interested in that at all. There'd be guys that would be interested in that idea. I suspect you'd see girls that are some and, you know, girls that aren't. So I wouldn't go so far to draw such a, you know, widespread.
Not a black and white line that girls are this way, guys.
But
sure,
what I think that's getting down to is that it just seems to me that the guy's sex drive is like that much more. Oh, here's an idea. What if it's because as guys, culturally, it seems to be our role to be out there getting girls, initiating and starting that process. And as a consequence, we have in our mindset, girls, like we need to go out there and do that. Whereas it's not as much on the other side. So honestly, like I have not been presented the opportunity for what you're describing, but I think I would in reality prefer just, you know, a stable, positive relationship with one person. I think that would probably be much preferable. However, I am in the mindset of I need to go out there and find a girl and all that. Not so much a girl will come and find me. And as a consequence, I think that sense of, you know, many would be cool, that might come from that.
The evolutionary background, right?
Evolutionary, but also cultural.
I was going to say that too. Well, I think it's more evolutionary because it's more hardwired into us. It comes from the investment that you have to give to a child. Like before there were cultural standards that you're supposed to stay with the woman who bears your child. There, you know, men were able to go have 5, 6, 7 children at the same time. Whereas if you're a woman, that's a 9-month commitment where you can't have another child. And, you know, also raising a child is a huge commitment because we have a long development.
But honestly,
when it comes to raising a society, monogamy is usually the best way to go. It mitigates conflict and things like that. It mitigates negative emotion in the possibilities for negative emotion.
And also, just speaking from my perspective, and maybe you guys share this with me, maybe you don't. While initially 4 Kate Uptons would be, wow, that'd be awesome. That'd be so dope.
Yeah.
Get to wake up every day of the week, call on other Kate Upton. But I think eventually I would like to foster a real connection really deeply with one person. And I'm not sure if that sense of trust can arise in monogamy. Maybe it can. And I think there is people.
In monogamy or in non-monogamy?
In, what is the word for that?
Polygamy?
Polygamy.
Yeah.
And some people seem to pull it off, and I don't know what their perspective is. But for me personally, there seems to be a depth to when one person says, I will commit to you, and the other person says the same thing. Because it shows that I am willing to fully stick with you regardless of how much I learn about you or like what pops up or what kind of troubles we have in the future. And if you always have 3 other Kate Uptons, that one Kate Upton that you're hanging out with is probably not going to really want to open up to you, because you can leave at any moment.
Yeah.
You can ditch immediately. And she can do the same for you, most likely. Maybe she has 4 Blakes. And then you take that up a notch, and that's traditionally what marriage is. It's when 2 people step together and they say, I am willing to commit not to you, but to the relationship itself. Each person commits to the relationship, not to each other. And by committing to that relationship, it's transcendent of them both, and they both unify into this one beautiful thing.
It's interesting that you should say that, because what I was thinking when I was hearing you is that the difference between a monogamous, relationship or some polygamous relationship is that I was thinking, like, in a monogamous relationship, both parties are saying, I am committing to you. Like, I am committing to this other person. Whereas in a polygamous relationship, I guess it would be, I don't know. My initial reaction was, could you have a group of people all committing to that same one? But I think that that's not typically what we're thinking about when we're thinking about polygamy. It's more chains of, two people digging each other, but also digging other people, as opposed to, a handful of people all really in on the same thing.
Well, it's strange because our society, or the societies that we've been exposed to in the literature we've read and in schooling, there hasn't really been a history of that where people just come together and are fully open emotionally and sexually. And you can just form connections with everyone in your small community. Obviously, it wouldn't work on the scale of like 30,000 people. But, if you have a group of, maybe 5-6 people, do you guys think that would work, where you could have a fully emotionally and sexually open and committed relationship?
Wow.
As a group?
As I really, really contemplate that, first of all, I don't know where the line could be drawn. You're right. Like, when does polygamy extend out to 30,000 people? And then I'm not sure if there's a point at which you can't connect with the people as deeply anymore. And maybe that point is past one. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the questions that the strange culturing of our society has not allowed us to ask. It's like, can we have a relationship with 2 people at once and make it, or not 2 people, but 3 people at once and make it work?
Between 3 people, yeah. And
have full, open, and connected emotional and sexual connections. Yeah. And,
I think,
does that hamper your ability to connect, like you were saying, Rich?
I think this gets into a difficulty in communication. As you start to add more people, you have less of a shared understanding that when I say something, that you know exactly what I mean. If I say, Eric, if I say Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, you know what I'm talking about then. I mean, to whatever extent that we do as undergrads. That doesn't mean as much to the rest of you guys, because we have not developed that shared language. And I think that in relationships, both, romantic and sexual, but also just friendship relationships, there's a lot of that, of understanding exactly where the other person is at, exactly what they're thinking about, how they will understand something that I say and all that. And that's difficult enough to achieve with one person, being able to have a very clear and open dialogue. Extending that to more and more people, I think, would become more difficult exponentially. However, I don't know that it wouldn't be doable.
Also, I think there's something about the exclusivity of the commitment in a monogamous relationship that makes it that much more special.
Yeah.
Because you can always rely on that person no matter what, even if it's like 4:30 a.m. and something terrible happens. That person is there for you, and you're there for that person, and that's it. Like, they're not going to have another person that they're like, oh, my other Kate Upton is having a crisis also. Like, that's not going to happen. Like you're there for each other, and that exclusive commitment is going to be so much more valuable than the sum of any different amounts of commitments.
Yeah.
And then, I guess in a sense too, it's interesting because as far as I can tell, almost every previous civilization in history has become monogamous. So I'm not sure if it's like a weird cultural thing by our standards. It seems to be a human phenomena.
Yeah.
The amount of polygamous societies we found has been, they are, what's the word? Every rule has an exception, and they are very, very rare exceptions.
I think monogamy is a very very, very stable thing, both for a relationship and for a culture and society. And that's why you see it. But that being said, the world we live in now is not the same as the world we lived in 50 years ago. I think trying to approach a polygamous relationship in the mainstream around regular people like 50 years ago, and having that be public would be extremely difficult. Nowadays, we live in the kind of world where things are open enough, things are changing quickly enough that I think we might see more of that thing happening. And I mean, it is. We talk about this as if is it possible or not. I'm sure it's going on out there. There are people in non-monogamous relationships.
But it is an experiment. And it's interesting when you develop a relationship with that many people, it seems like a hierarchy would form within that massive relationship. You know, I would prefer this Kate Upton over this other Kate Upton because she's more attractive, or I can connect more emotionally with her. And if I form that, you know, connection with this person, and there's this hierarchy that's developing, then that will inherently exclude other people from that connection I'm getting with her. And those people will sort of be left to develop their own connections with other people as we shut the other people out.
It'll lead to power dynamics.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So maybe this is why societies become monogamous, because we have all of these problems that develop. But there's problems either way, you know. This is one of the problems that I think needs to be solved in society, because as sex becomes more and more accessible through apps like Tinder, etc.
You say that. Okay, I don't want to interrupt you. Keep going.
The ease with which we get sex is increasing. And so when you're trying to form a family, and staying together is very important for the psychological development of your child, you know, divorces have drastic impacts on a child's psychological development. And so it's beneficial for that child if you stay together. And, you know, as we all probably know, what is it, 50% of marriages end in divorce?
Yeah, I think it's even more than that.
Even more than that now. And so it's like we have to acknowledge that these thoughts exist and come up with a reasonable solution for how we ought to act in these situations.
Again, I think we're young. This is what we're doing right now, is we're trying to figure this out and talking with each other, going through relationships and making sense of it as individuals. I don't know that this is one of those things we're supposed to have figured out yet.
Yeah, definitely.
But,
I don't have it figured out at all.
Okay, Blake.
Wait, can I add on to what you're saying, Max?
Yeah, go for it.
So one of the things you mentioned was we're at this point now where sex is so easily accessible that we have so many options so frequently that how could you stick with one? How could you choose one when there's such a great potential, or what seems like a great potential? And that seems to be the trick of online things like Tinder. You can continue swiping. How many of those people you actually end up ever meeting, who knows? But it's always there. It's always right in front of your face. You're like, oh,
it's an
Victoria.
outlet to feel as though you're making progress.
So you can sit there completely isolated, maybe going on one out of every 300 swipes. You get one date out of it, and maybe it's unsuccessful because it's the girl who goes, I don't know. It's just, you never know, right? So your odds are actually much lower than you think they would be. So you could sit there in isolation but feel as if you have all of these options, and then easily write off the person in real life. And I think it extends beyond just Tinder.
That's interesting.
You know, it's with how connected the world is in general. We have this sense that we're never more than a text away from all of our friends, but in reality, we end up isolating ourselves so much because we think that, I don't know, we confuse the device for the people.
Yeah, the truth is, I've read a statistic. People are having less sex now than they ever have.
Really?
Yes, like significantly so. And we're college students. College students are having less sex than ever before in history. Wow. And a lot of it, I know, and it's shocking. It's this kind of blew my mind when I heard it, because for me at least, it's very easy to get in that attitude of, everybody's, I'm sure, having a ton of sex. There's Tinder. There's, you know, all these different people are just can text each other, hit each other up, things like that. But the truth is, it seems to be that this technology is making it less likely that people actually get with each other. And I think what you were saying, Rich, that it provides the illusion of progress. It provides the illusion of, if I'm swiping on here, then I'm doing something that will towards getting me laid. And it's when people have their sex drive to go out and interact with people, or when people have a drive to go out and have sex, if they have an outlet for that makes them feel like they're doing that,
progress towards
making progress, that's a lot easier than actually going out and interacting with people, then they'll choose that one. And it's actually, the statistics are showing, much less likely to lead to people actually having human connections and all that. And that's something that I'm actually really worried for society in terms of things that I'm scared for our future as a civilization. That's a big one, because
just connectedness in general.
Connectedness and sex underlying that, because I think that the sex drive is, if I would go so far as to say the key driver behind social interaction, behind.
Sorry guys, I'm not gonna fuck you, but I do want to be your friend.
Yeah, but but I mean, a lot of guys, they get together and talk about how getting girls and things like that. A lot of people go to parties to meet girls and all of that. People go to the gym. Guys go to the gym together to get bigger and all of that. That I see that as being a lot of the fuel behind what gets people to interact with society, to try and dress well, try and make money, things like that. And if we're having a harder and harder time actually interacting with each other, actually meeting each other, and leading to sex and all of that, that scares me.
And there's also this strange disconnect too, because even though sex is less frequent, hookup culture still exists. So we're getting sex less frequently, and it's more frequently hookups. So we're getting less meaningful, less frequent sex. And we really, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the coming years.
I find that in terms of relationships in general, I'm very weary to, commit to somebody these days, because I find that there are all of these options. And to commit to somebody, it seems like in the past, we didn't have such access to all these people. We didn't know all of the possibilities of the people that we were going to meet in the future. And so now, having all these possibilities, it's like I'm searching, and I don't know if this is true for you all too, but it's almost as if I'm searching for that one that meets and checks all of the boxes. And I don't think that we ever had that possibility or that outlook in the past, where we were reserving and really waiting for the person that was perfect.
Yeah.
But I find that that's very prevalent in my mind now. I don't want to commit to anybody until they check all of the boxes. And I don't think, I'm not sure if that's healthy or not,
I think this gets down to more of this is also potentially just one of the stages that we are in our lives. We came from high school, where we were a lot more organized in clubs and activities and things like that. I feel like in general, it seems people had more structured social groups. And now in college, it's a different environment, because you're right, there are tons and tons of people everywhere. And it's it does feel like there's so much potential out there. But I feel like we're less driven to be actually interacting with people and having those interactions where we get to know the people that we want to be checking all the boxes. We don't ever find that out, because we don't have that same consistency of interaction.
And also, I think a lot of those boxes that we would like checked are boxes that you can't see until you've known the person for quite a long time and really committed to them too, or not maybe committed, but really spent time to know them. Like, does this person meet my need for connection? Do I have a consistent, meaningful interaction with them? Do I feel joy when I see them? And that's something that plays out over months, years. You learn to know a person. But we're at the stage now where it seems like if a person doesn't meet all your check boxes when you first meet them, maybe you can find it somewhere else. And we never have to commit to one thing and see if it works out, because we have this strange illusion that we're surrounded by unlimited options. And this ties back a lot to a lot that they talk about in marketing too, where you put 10 soft drinks on a table and ask everyone to try the soft drinks and see if they want to buy any. Generally, the sales are very low. However, you cut the options down to 2 soft drinks. They go, oh, I like this one better. And they'll buy it at a much, much higher rate. And that seems to show something about our psychology, as if having so many options effectively keeps us from choosing anything.
Yeah.
Wow. So transferring that to relationships, that's really scary.
It
to have
is.
that many options. And what other things do we have that many options for in life now?
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't just translate to sex and all this stuff. We have unlimited options for every single thing. But it's concerning to have that many options. When you say that we don't make decisions when we have too many options. What other things are we not going to, I heard a statistic the other day that our generation is moving jobs more than any other generation. We stay in a job for a year, maybe 2 years, and we switch jobs. It's like, it's almost as if we have this decentralized personality type now that just wants to hop from thing to thing because we have too many options to choose any one in particular. And I wonder if that in and of itself is causing, now this is a long leap, but is causing a lot of our mental health problems that seem to be occurring in our...
I would not be surprised whatsoever. Just in that, this is anecdotal, but I think there's truth behind it. Pardon me. When I'm happy is when I'm in a connected friend group, when I have a great community of people who I know love me and I love them and I can hang out with them and they really know me and all that. And when I don't, that can really suck. And those are the times where I feel like I get really into funks and all that. And if socially we're not as connected anymore, if a lot of people have their sexual or romantic needs unfulfilled, like I can see how that leads to a whole lot of mental health issues.
Well, one thing that's fascinating is, I don't know if fascinating is the word. I guess when I look at the idea that we have so many options, that we'll always be running around looking for the next best thing and never fully committing to something or never really know ourselves. I think we're at a point now where there's always going to be this many options and exponentially more into the future. So what we need to look at is the value structure beneath selecting your options. And it's at this interesting point now where we're kind of in a point in society where we really need to learn who we are much more quickly than I think we had to in the past. Because now we're at this time where algorithms and everything around you is learning more about you than you know yourself. I open up Spotify and I listen to my Discover Weekly and I go, wow, Spotify knows the songs I like better than I do. I'm sure Tinder has algorithms, which face types am I swiping right, what's going on? And then just finding women that it thinks I will like. And who knows how that's going to extend down to the future as we create more and more complex processing systems for all the immense data we have. And we can, I don't know if you've seen that Black Mirror episode where it finds your 99% match. Mm-hmm. Effectively, the algorithms, the world, learns more about you than you know about yourself. However, it's this strange paradox that as it learns more about you, you follow it, you click on it, you accept it, and suddenly it is defining who you are and what you like. Yeah. Because you never have to look inside to see what you really value, because everything around you is collecting all of the inputs you're putting into the world and giving you something it thinks you'll like. And generally, it's something that in that moment you probably will. So you could follow that indefinitely and never really know who you are.
So is that a good option? I mean, is that an acceptable way of life to swipe on all of the 99% matches and say, wow, I've got all these options and they're 99% matches and I love all of these things I'm swiping on?
I would say...
how long does that last before people get sick of that? Or does it last forever?
I think people are already sick of it, whatever it is, where we are with... this is a depressing idea, but just our culture and society writ large. And when I say writ large, I mean that. The big picture aspects of our culture and society. Maybe not my relationships with my friends and all of that, but I think people aren't happy with it. People aren't satisfied.
Yeah. And so how does that manifest itself? I mean, we obviously can't burn the thing to the ground because
that's the real question, is what do we do amongst this new, strange, new world?
We assess our values. We can't, the options are never going to go away. We can't stop the progress that is. There's going to be immense benefits that come with. So you really need to look at what it is you value. And personally, I've realized even though I can make all of these online connections, the frequency which with they pan out and the frequency which with I actually connect from people online, when I look back on my life history, is shockingly low.
Yeah.
And while there's going to be exceptions, people who just have met tons of people online and met them in real life and it's worked out, I think in general that seems to be the case. And when you think about it like that, you have all these perceived online options, but the chances of you meeting them in real life and genuinely connecting them with them are lower. So when you find somebody in real life who you actually do connect with, to value that connection in and of itself. Mm-hmm. And that's just one part. We're just looking at connecting with people in relationships, but that looking at things and learning what it is you appreciate by paying attention to yourself is, I think, going to be more important than it ever has been before.
So paying attention to yourself is sort of how you, because as you get deeper and deeper into the swiping of like, okay, I like this because, you know, it's feeding you what you like and you're just swiping on it. Mm-hmm. And you're like, okay, yeah, sure. I like this. I like this. I like this. To escape from that is going to become more and more difficult.
It's going to be more and more difficult, but I see there as being so much almost untapped potential, and that people, I think, are crying out for connection, and they're crying out for real, substantial human interaction and all that. And I think, so that kind of gives me hope, but I think that we need to start figuring out, how do we do that? How do we break that mold?
Yeah.
And for me, it's it's funny. It's been talking with you guys, because we are people with similar value systems. We found each other. I think it's been this amazing triumph that we have found each other through all of the, you know, chaos and fog of what our social world is. But we now that we've found each other, you guys have seen how meaningful this connection has been. And together we're trying to figure out, what do we do to move forward? And for me, the conclusion that I've come to is that, you know, Tinder, all that stuff, it's useless. And if I'm being real with myself, it's useless, and I need to figure out what the alternative is. And I'm going to figure it out with my friends and then try and change things. And also I start trying to change things by myself. I start trying to change things by me going out and interacting with people, meeting new people, talking with them, because that's what we got to do.